In the grand halls of the Galactic Academy of Defense, whispers spread like wildfire. The newest members of the Interspecies Exchange Program had finally arrived. They were humans, creatures from a planet called Earth that the Galactic Council had classified as a death world. Mook stood near the entrance, his four segmented arms folded across his chitinous chest, his mantis-like head turned slightly, compound eyes capturing every detail of the 5 humans who walked through the academy doors. They looked so fragile compared to most species, with their soft skin and no visible natural armor. I expected them to be bigger, Mook clicked to his friend Ta. Ta's blue gelatinous form rippled with curiosity. They evolved on a planet with nearly twice our standard gravity. I heard their bones are dense as metal alloys. The humans carried themselves differently than other new students. There was no nervous glancing or hesitant steps. They moved with confidence, their eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "I'm Jin," said the tallest human, extending a hand toward Mook. "These are my teammates, Su, Yoon, Hyun, and Min." Mook carefully extended one clawed arm, remembering the briefing on human greeting customs. "Welcome to the Academy. I am Mook of Thexus Prime." "And I'm Ta," the blue Arcturian added, extending a rippling pseudopod. Jin shook both their appendages without hesitation, which impressed Mook. Most new species were uncomfortable touching Thexian claws or Arcturian gel. "You're just in time for combat training," Tai explained as they walked toward the training dome. "Though today will likely be just orientation and—" "Attention, cadets." Commander Vrax's voice boomed through the hallway. The tall, four-eyed alien's thick gray skin was marked with battle scars. "Today's combat exercise will begin in 30 minutes. Full gear, live ammunition training." A stunned silence fell over the gathered alien students. Several gasped. One Clavonian student's fur stood straight up in alarm. "Live ammunition. There must be a mistake," whispered Da, a small rodent-like Vesperian. "We don't start live fire exercises until at least the 3rd year." Mook turned to explain this to the humans, expecting to see fear or confusion. Instead, all 5 humans were grinning at each other. Finally, Su said, cracking her knuckles, "I was worried this would be too easy." Min, the smallest human, was already checking a datavad. "The armory is this way, right? We should see what they've got." Mook's mandibles clicked in confusion. "You want to use live ammunition on your first day?" Jin shrugged. "We've been training with live rounds since basic, standard practice on Earth." "But you could die." Ta's body rippled with alarm. Yoon, a human with short black hair, laughed. "That's kind of the point of training, isn't it? Learning how not to die." As they walked to the armory, more alien students gathered, staring at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Word had spread quickly about the Deathworlders who seemed eager to face lethal training. In the armory, the Academy's weapon master, a 6-armed Volnar named Pak, looked up in surprise. "New students aren't authorized for combat weapons yet. You'll need to complete basic safety protocols first." Commander Vrax ordered live ammunition training, Jin explained, holding up her student credentials. Pak blinked all 3 eyes in confusion, then checked his console. "This is unusual, but the order is confirmed." He reluctantly opened the weapons lockers. "These are standard-issue kinetic rifles. The safety is located." "Got it," Hyun said, already checking the weapon with practiced ease. The other humans followed suit, inspecting their rifles with familiar motions. Mook watched in fascination as Minfield stripped his weapon and reassembled it in under 30 seconds. None of the humans needed instructions on how to load ammunition or set the power levels. "You've used these before?" Mook asked. "Not this exact model," Min replied. "But the principles are the same. Actually, Earth weapons are usually more lethal than these." In the preparation room, the alien students struggled with their protective gear while the humans helped each other adjust their armor with efficient movements. Does your homeworld really require you to train with deadly weapons regularly? Ty asked as they prepared to enter the combat dome. Earth isn't exactly friendly, Sue explained. Between the natural disasters, predators, and our own history of conflicts, humans learn to handle danger early. Our training instructors said if you're not occasionally scared for your life during practice, you won't be ready when real danger comes. You nodded. The combat dome doors slid open, revealing a massive simulated battlefield. Broken buildings, rubble, and various terrain features created a complex environment with multiple levels and hiding spots. Smoke machines created limited visibility, and hidden speakers played recordings of weapons fire and explosions. Commander Vrax's voice came over the speakers. Today's exercise is capture the flag. 2 teams. Red team defends their position. Blue team attempts to capture the objective. Weapons are set to 1/4 power, enough to cause pain and minor injuries, but not lethal, usually. The alien students looked horrified at the usually part. The humans checked their weapon settings with serious expressions. Red team, you have 5 minutes to establish defensive positions, Vrax continued. Blue team, prepare your assault strategy. Mook and Tai found themselves assigned to the blue team alongside Jin, Sue, and Min. The other humans were on the red team with several alien students. What's the plan? Mook asked nervously as they gathered in the blue team's starting zone. Jin looked at the holographic map. Standard infiltration approach. Mook, your exoskeleton provides good protection. You and I will provide covering fire while Sue moves to this flanking position. She pointed to a collapsed building. Tai, your species can flow through small spaces, right? Tay rippled nervously. Yes, but I've never done so under fire. You'll be with Min. He'll keep you safe while you slip through this drainage pipe to get behind their position. Mook was amazed at how quickly the humans developed a tactical plan. Before he could ask any questions, the buzzer sounded, and the exercise began. The first volley of fire from the red team position sent most alien students diving for cover. Jin, however, calmly moved to a barricade and began returning precise shots. Mook, I need suppressing fire on that second-story window, she called. Mook's claws shook as he aimed his rifle. The first shot went wide, but Jin didn't criticize. Take a breath, steady your arms, then squeeze slowly, she instructed. His next shots were better, forcing a red team defender to duck away from the window. Jin nodded approval. Sue, move now, Jin called into her communicator. Across the battlefield, Sue sprinted from cover to cover with surprising speed. When a barrage of fire came her way, she didn't freeze or panic, but rolled behind a concrete barrier, coming up firing. Mook had never seen anything like it. Most academy trainees would have been paralyzed by fear at the first shot, but these humans moved through the chaos as if they had trained for it their whole lives. Which, Mook realized, they probably had. 20 minutes into the exercise, Min and Tai had successfully infiltrated the red team's position from behind. Tai had squeezed through spaces that seemed impossibly small, while Min provided protection. We're in position. Min's voice came through the comm. Moving on the objective now. Hyun, on the red team, had organized an impressive defense. The alien students on his team had overcome their initial fear and were following his instructions. The final confrontation happened at the red flag position. Jin led a frontal assault that drew attention away from Min and Tai's rear approach. Projectiles filled the air, several hitting their marks with painful impacts. Mook took a hit to his arm, the pain causing him to drop his weapon. Before he could recover, Jin was there, dragging him to safety. Good work holding that position, she said, checking his injury. Nothing serious. On Earth, we'd call that a scratch. When the exercise ended, Blue Team had captured the objective, but both sides had fought well. As they exited the combat dome, sweaty and battered, the alien students looked at the humans with new understanding. How are you all so calm during combat? Tai asked, still shaking slightly from the experience. Jin smiled. When you grow up on a planet that's constantly trying to kill you, you either learn to face danger or you don't survive. For humans, this isn't just training, it's how we live. Commander Vrak's approach, looking pleased. An impressive display from our Earth cadets. Perhaps the rest of you will learn something from these Deathworlders. Beside him, Mook's compound eyes reflected the simulated destruction. The mantis-like Thexion's exoskeleton seemed to lose some of its usual luster as he processed what was happening. This must be a mistake. Mook clicked, mandibles moving nervously. First cycle students always begin with virtual simulations. Even touching a weapon usually requires a full term of safety training. The other alien students gathered in a tight group, their varied physiologies all displaying signs of anxiety. A gelatinous Arcturian named Ta had turned an alarming shade of pale blue. Two reptilian Sarkians were hissing urgently to each other, their tail spines fully extended in alarm. In stark contrast, the 5 human students moved with calm purpose. They approached the weapons rack without hesitation, selecting equipment and checking it with practiced motions. June, a tall human with dark hair pulled back tightly, picked up a standard-issue plasma rifle and checked its power cell with casual familiarity. Her teammates, Hana, Sung, Jai, and Yun, followed suit, strapping on armor plates and selecting secondary weapons as if they'd done this hundreds of times before. Mook couldn't help staring at June as she adjusted the power settings on her rifle without even looking at the controls. When she caught his gaze, she simply shrugged. Standard Thursday back at Earth's military academy, she explained with a half-smile, though they usually made the terrain harder. Harder. Mook's antennae twitched in disbelief. How could it possibly be harder than this? June seemed to consider the question seriously. Well, for one thing, they'd usually flood half the training ground or set parts of it on fire. Sometimes, they'd cut the oxygen levels to simulate high-altitude combat. Oh, and the weapons wouldn't be set to training power. They'd be live. Day's ears flattened against his head. You trained with fully powered weapons. As students. Of course, Yun chimed in. She was the smallest of the humans, but moved with a fluid grace that suggested dangerous capability. How else would we learn to respect them properly? Commander Vrax's voice boomed through the simulation dome. Teams are as follows. Alpha Team will be led by June, with Mook, Da, and Sarla. Bravo Team under Kip, with Hana and Lom. Charlie Team under Sung, with Tai and Riss. Delta Team under Jai, with Grex and Zin. Echo Team under Yun, with Prill and Voss. The alien students looked at each other in confusion. They had expected to be grouped together, not split up and placed under human leadership. Each team has 15 minutes to reach their designated position. Vrax continued. You will find equipment packs at your starting points. The exercise begins when the red flare launches. Objectives will be transmitted to your team leaders at that time. Mook reluctantly approached June, who was already studying a holographic map of the battlefield. I've never fired a weapon outside of virtual simulation, he admitted. I'm not sure I'll be useful to you. June looked up, her expression softening slightly. Everyone feels that way their first time in live training. Just stick close to me and do exactly what I say. Day scurried up, his small form trembling slightly. This is insanity. We could be seriously injured. That's the point, Jun said, checking her sidearm. In real combat, injury is always a possibility. Better to learn how to handle it in a controlled environment. The third member of their team, Sarla, a 4-armed arthropoid with gleaming blue carapace, approached cautiously. On my world, only police and military personnel ever handle weapons. I am a science student. June nodded. On Earth, everyone learns basic weapons handling and combat skills. Our planet doesn't give us much choice. As they made their way to their starting position, Mook saw the other human students leading their teams with the same confident efficiency. None of them seemed remotely concerned about the coming exercise. Alpha Team's starting point was inside a partially collapsed building. June immediately began sorting through the equipment pack they found there. Mook, Your natural armor gives you an advantage, so you'll take point when we move. Sarla, those extra arms make you perfect for our support position. You'll carry the medical kit and emergency supplies. Day, your hearing is exceptional, so you're our early warning system. The alien students looked at each other in surprise. June had already identified their natural strengths and assigned roles accordingly. Have you studied our species? Mook asked. Basic xenobiology is required learning on Earth, June explained, handing out equipment. We've been preparing for first contact since before we achieved spaceflight. As they set up their position, they could see the other teams doing the same across the ruined cityscape. Through a broken window, Mook spotted Hannah showing her team how to create a defensive perimeter, while Sung was demonstrating proper weapon grip to his teammates. Why are you all so comfortable with this? Dai asked, adjusting the too large combat vest that draped over his small frame. Doesn't the idea of getting hurt frighten you? June paused her preparations. Of course it does. Pain is pain, no matter what planet you're from. But on Earth, we learned early that fear is just information. It tells you to be careful, not to stop. A sudden thought struck Mook. Your planet. You called it a death world. What does that mean exactly? June smiled, but there was something different in her eyes now. Something ancient and hard. Earth has more natural disasters, predators, and extreme environments than most habitable planets. Our gravity is crushing by galactic standards. Our weather can kill in hours. Even our microbes are aggressive. And yet you survived, Sarla noted, her voice containing a hint of new respect. We did more than survive, June replied, checking her weapon one final time. We thrived. Every challenge Earth threw at us made us adapt, made us stronger. She looked at each of her alien teammates. That's why this training feels basic to us. Where we come from, training has to be harsh because reality is harsher. A red flare shot up over the simulation dome, bathing everything in crimson light. June's communicator pinged with their objectives. She read them quickly, then looked up at her team. Our mission is to secure the central plaza and hold it for 30 minutes. Live fire will begin in 60 seconds. Daz's whiskers twitched frantically. Live fire. They're actually going to shoot at us. Training rounds, June clarified. They sting like hell, but won't cause permanent damage. Usually. Mook's mandibles clicked in alarm. Stay behind cover, follow my lead, and you'll be fine, June said, moving toward the doorway. Remember your breathing techniques if you get hit. The pain is temporary. As they prepared to move out, Mook watched the human check her weapon one final time, her movements so practiced they seemed almost ritualistic. He realized something that hadn't occurred to him before. Humans didn't train with weapons because they loved violence. They did it because they respected how dangerous their universe was. The first shots rang out across the simulation dome. Through the windows, Mook could see Sung's team already engaged with an opposing force, moving with coordinated precision that belied their brief time together. Ready? June asked, her hand on the door handle. Mook, Dai, and Sarla looked at each other, a moment of silent communication passing between three very different species from three peaceful worlds, now united in their sudden understanding of what it meant to come from a planet that was constantly trying to kill you. Ready, they answered together, and followed their human leader into the fray. The crackle of energy weapons filled the air. Blue bolts of plasma streaked across the simulated urban battlefield, slamming into concrete walls and sending fragments flying. The first volley of suppression fire wasn't aimed to hit anyone, just to pin them down and test their reactions. It worked exactly as intended. Most of the alien students immediately dove for cover, their bodies responding to ancient survival instincts. Ta, the gelatinous Arcturian, flattened himself against the ground until he was barely an inch thick. Da, the rodent-like Vesperian, curled into a tight ball behind a fallen pillar, his ears pressed flat against his head. Even the normally stoic four-armed Sarkans pressed themselves against walls, eyes wide with alarm. The humans, however, did something entirely different. As plasma bolts flew overhead, Jun dropped to one knee and immediately returned fire. Hannah rolled behind a concrete barrier and popped up on the opposite side, flanking the source of the incoming shots. Sung, Jai, and Un spread out in a practiced formation, using hand signals to communicate their movements. 3 hostiles, northeast corner, Jun called out, her voice calm despite the chaos. She made a series of quick gestures with her left hand, and the other humans immediately adjusted their positions. Mook found himself separated from his team when a particularly close shot forced him to scramble behind a collapsed wall. He ended up in a small depression in the ground beside Sung, who was methodically reloading his weapon. Sure enough, the defenders were thrown into confusion by the simultaneous attack from unexpected angles. Their fire became erratic, splitting between the 2 targets and effectively neutralizing their advantage. "Now we move again," Sung said. "This time to that overturned transport at your 11 o'clock. From there, we can provide covering fire for Jay's team to advance up the middle." Mook stared at the human in disbelief. "You planned all this? During a chaotic firefight?" Sung actually laughed. "This isn't chaos. This is just Tuesday. You should see what happens when things actually go wrong." As they prepared to move again, Mook noticed something he hadn't before. The human's heartbeat was steady, his breathing controlled. Despite being in the middle of a simulated battle with projectiles flying everywhere, Sung showed no physical signs of stress. "Aren't you afraid?" Mook asked, genuinely curious. Sung considered the question seriously. "Being afraid doesn't help you survive. Being alert does. Earth taught us that fear is a luxury you can only afford when you're safe." A new barrage of fire swept their position. Instead of cowering, Sung counted the shots under his breath, waiting for the pattern to emerge. "Besides," he added, "once you've outrun a flash flood or survived a predator pack during mating season, simulated combat feels almost relaxing." The pause in fire came, and once again they sprinted across open ground. This time, Mook kept pace with Sung, his movements more deliberate, more controlled. He was still afraid, but something was changing in his perception. He was beginning to understand why humans moved the way they did, why they planned the way they did. When they reached the overturned transport, they found Yun already there with her alien teammates, Prill and Voss, both looking thoroughly shaken. "Took you long enough," Yun said to Sung with a grin. "We've been waiting to advance for nearly 2 minutes. Had to give the rookie here his first combat lesson." Sung replied, nodding toward Mook. Yun assessed Mook with a quick glance. "Hit on the upper carapace. Not bad for your first time under fire." "How did you know I was hit?" Mook asked in surprise. "You're favoring your right side slightly," Yun explained. "It's subtle, but humans are good at reading body language across species. Helps us identify predators and prey." From their new position, they had a clear view of the entire battlefield. June and Hannah had successfully flanked the main opposition force. Jay's team was advancing up the center. The carefully coordinated movements of the humans had transformed what should have been a chaotic firefight into a methodical, almost surgical operation. "We're products of our environment," some said, as if reading Mook's thoughts. "Earth doesn't forgive mistakes. So we learn to work together, to communicate efficiently, to take calculated risks, and to always have a backup plan." As they prepared to make their final push toward the objective, Mook realized that he would never look at humans the same way again. What had initially seemed like recklessness was actually deeply ingrained survival instinct, just expressed in a way completely foreign to most galactic species. The Deathworlders didn't just survive. They thrived on challenge. 1 hour into the combat simulation, a clear pattern had emerged. The human students moved freely across the battlefield, advancing their positions and securing objectives. Meanwhile, most alien students remained where they had first taken cover, too afraid to move under the barrage of training rounds. From the elevated control room overlooking the simulation dome, Commander Vrax watched with growing interest. His 4 eyes narrowed as he tracked the movements of the human students through multiple camera feeds. "Their tactical awareness is remarkable," he said to his assistant, a slender avian species named Lyric. "Note how they never remain stationary for more than 30 seconds. Lyric's feathered head bobbed in agreement. "Most fascinating is their communication system. They barely speak aloud, yet move in perfect coordination." On the main screen, they watched as June signaled with 3 quick hand gestures. Immediately, Sung and Hannah adjusted their positions, creating a crossfire that trapped an opposing team in place. The human's capacity for controlled aggression is unexpected, Vrax admitted, making notes on his datapad. "I had anticipated recklessness based on their physiological profiles. Instead, we're seeing calculated risk assessment." Below them on the battlefield, a temporary ceasefire had been called. The simulation dome's artificial sun indicated midday, and even the most hardened training regimen allowed for brief rest periods. The students gathered in small groups in the shade of destroyed buildings, drinking water and catching their breath. Mook found himself sitting beside Jay, the human's back resting casually against a concrete slab, as if they weren't in the middle of a combat zone. Despite having been in constant motion for the past hour, Jay showed only minimal signs of fatigue. "How are you not exhausted?" Mook asked, his mandibles clicking weakly. The Thexian's normally iridescent exoskeleton was dulled with dust and sweat. Beside them, Ta had partially liquefied from stress, his blue form spreading into a puddle. Even Da, despite his species' natural quickness, was breathing rapidly, his small chest heaving. Jay took a long drink from his water bottle before answering. "Endurance is the first thing you learn on Earth. Our planet has no patience for weakness." "But we've been running and fighting for a full hour," protested Prill, a tall, reed-thin alien with 4 eyes set in a vertical line down the center of their face. "You have to understand," Jay explained, absently checking a bruise forming on his arm, where a training round had struck him. "Earth throws everything at us. Extreme temperatures, toxins, disasters, predators. We adapted by becoming adaptable." "What does that even mean?" Tai asked, his gelatinous form slowly reforming into his usual shape. Jay considered for a moment. "It means we expect things to go wrong. We plan for the worst. We train for conditions more difficult than we'll actually face." Example, Sung called from nearby, where he was helping a Sarkin student adjust an ill-fitting piece of armor. "Your average Earth military training might include running 20 kilometers in full gear, then immediately conducting precision shooting exercises. While hungry and sleep-deprived," Hannah added. "Sometimes in artificial rain or snow," Yun chimed in. "Or actual rain or snow," Jum corrected with a slight smile. The alien students looked at each other in disbelief. "But why put yourselves through such hardship?" asked Da, his whiskers twitching in confusion. "Surely virtual simulations would be more efficient for learning tactics." "Because your body needs to know what your mind has learned," Jay said simply. "Knowledge without experience is just theory. And theory doesn't save you when a flash flood hits your camp at midnight, or when a predator pack decides you look like dinner." A soft tone indicated that the break was ending. Students began moving back to their positions, but with noticeably less enthusiasm than the human contingent. "I've been hit 7 times already," complained a reptilian sergeant named Shin, showing the red marks on his scaled hide where training rounds had struck. "These weapons are barbaric. Would you rather learn with real weapons?" June asked, her tone serious rather than mocking. "Because that's how we trained on Earth. This is actually quite gentle by our standards." Before the alien students could respond to this disturbing revelation, Commander Vrax's voice came over the speakers. "For the second phase of this exercise, we will be implementing fog of war conditions. Visibility will be reduced by 70%. Teams must adapt to limited visual data." On cue, thick artificial fog began rolling across the battlefield, obscuring everything beyond a few meters. Most alien students tensed visibly, their anxiety rising as their primary sense was compromised. "This is impossible," Prill exclaimed. "How can we fight what we cannot see?" To their surprise, Un stepped forward with a confidence that seemed completely out of place given the circumstances. "This is where teamwork becomes essential," she said. "Everyone, gather around." The alien students hesitantly formed a circle around Ian. Even those from different teams joined, desperate for guidance in these new challenging conditions. "First rule of limited visibility combat: use your other senses," Ian explained. "Mook, your antennae can detect air movement. Day, your hearing is exceptional. Ta can feel vibrations through surfaces." She pointed to different students, identifying their natural advantages with surprising accuracy. "Second rule: suppressive fire creates space for movement." Yuan picked up her weapon and demonstrated. "I'm going to show you how to lay down cover fire effectively. When I fire, I'm not trying to hit anything specific. I'm denying the enemy the use of that space." She fired a controlled burst into the fog. The blue energy bolts illuminated the mist as they passed through it, creating an eerie, beautiful effect. "While I'm firing, my teammates can move safely through areas I'm not targeting. Watch." At some unseen signal, Jun and Sung dashed forward into the fog, completely invisible to the watching students. Moments later, training rounds came flying back from a completely different direction. "They'd flanked the position I was suppressing," Yun explained. "Now, let's practice. Who wants to try providing covered fire?" To everyone's surprise, Dai stepped forward, his small form seeming to stand a bit taller. I would like to try," he said, his voice still squeaky but with a new determination. Yun handed him a scaled-down weapon suited to his smaller size. "Remember, short controlled bursts. 3 seconds on, 2 seconds off to prevent overheating." The tiny Vesperian took aim and fired into the fog, his rounds following the pattern Yun had demonstrated with remarkable precision. "Excellent," Yun praised. "Mokta, think you can advance while Dai provides cover." The two aliens looked at each other nervously, then nodded. As Dai fired another suppressing burst, they moved forward into the fog. From the control room, Vrax watched this impromptu training session with growing approval. "They're teaching our students," he noted, "not just showing off their own skills, but actively improving the capabilities of those around them. It's spreading across the battlefield." Lyric observed, flipping through various camera feeds. "Look, the human named Sung is showing the Sarchans how to move silently in their heavy exoskeletons." As the exercise continued, a remarkable transformation began taking place. The alien students, following the humans' examples and instructions, started moving more confidently through the fog-shrouded battlefield. They were still not as skilled or as comfortable as the humans, but the improvement was undeniable. By the third hour, some alien teams were successfully completing objectives without human assistance. When Mook and Ta captured a control point on their own, using tactics they had learned from watching the humans, their chittering and burbling sounds of triumph carried across the battlefield. "They're learning," Joan said to Hana as they watched from a nearby position. "Faster than I expected." "They're intelligent species," Hana replied. "They just never needed these skills before." "Look at them," Joan said with something like pride in her voice. "They're actually starting to enjoy it." It was true. As the alien students gained confidence, their fear was gradually being replaced by excitement. When Dai successfully dodged a barrage of training rounds using a rolling technique Jay had taught him, his squeaky laughter echoed through the fog. In the control room, Vrax made a final note on his datapad, then turned to Lyric. "I've seen enough," he said. "Adjust tomorrow's training schedule. All first-year students will participate in combined combat exercises with the human contingent." "Sir," Lyric's feathers rose in surprise. "That's a significant departure from the standard curriculum." Vrax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture of finality in his species. "The humans have shown us something important today," he said. "They don't just survive adversity. They thrive on it. and they make others better in the process. He looked down at the battlefield one last time. That is a lesson worth learning. A loud siren signaled the end of the combat simulation. The artificial lighting in the dome shifted from the dim battle conditions to standard illumination, revealing the full extent of the fabricated battlefield. Holographic buildings slowly faded away, leaving only the physical obstacles and barricades behind. 3 grueling hours after it began, the exercise was finally over. The alien students emerged from their positions, many of them moving stiffly from tension and exertion. Their bodies showed various signs of strain. Mook's exoskeleton had lost its usual shine. Taz's gelatinous form rippled with exhaustion, and Day's fur was matted with sweat. In stark contrast, the human students gathered in the center of the training area, comparing notes as casually as if discussing a recreational activity rather than a combat exercise. Your flanking maneuver in the 3rd sector was pretty impressive, Sung told June, pantomiming her movement with his hands. Though you left your right side exposed for about 2 seconds too long. June nodded, accepting the criticism without defensiveness. I misjudged the cover. Next time, I'll slide another meter left before popping up. Hana was examining a bruise forming on her forearm where a training round had struck her. The new targeting system in these training weapons is much better than what we had back home. I barely felt the impact distortion. Impact distortion, Da squeaked, overhearing as he approached the humans. The small rodent-like Vesperian looked utterly bewildered. That's a pain suppression technique for serious injuries, not training exercises. The humans exchanged amused glances. Basic first-year technique at Earth's military academy, Yum explained. You learn to compartmentalize pain so you can keep functioning. Daz's whiskers twitched in disbelief. I don't understand, he admitted. How can your species treat potential death as a training opportunity? The alien students had gathered around now, all showing various expressions of exhaustion, confusion, and newfound respect. June smiled, and there was something ancient and predatory in her eyes. On Earth, we have a saying, train hard, fight easy. But no one was fighting you, Ta pointed out, his blue form still fluctuating slightly from stress. Earth joined the Galactic Council peacefully. You have no natural enemies in space. Yet, Jay added quietly. When the aliens looked at him in alarm, he clarified. It's not that we expect enemies. It's that we're prepared either way. Humans never assume safety is permanent. The main display screens around the training dome suddenly activated. Commander Vrax's face appeared on all of them, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Students, instructors, this exercise has provided valuable data. His deep voice resonated through the chamber. The integration of Earth humans into our training programs has yielded unexpected insights. The screen shifted to show statistics from the exercise, hit percentages, objective completion rates, and team coordination metrics. The human-led teams outperformed all standard benchmarks by significant margins. The adaptability displayed by both human students and those who worked alongside them demonstrates the value of practical combat experience. Vrax continued. Therefore, effective immediately, all Academy training protocols will be modified to incorporate elements of Earth's methodology. Commander Vrax's final assessment appeared in bold letters across the screens. Human integration successful. Recommendation. All students to adopt modified human training protocols. A collective groan rose from the alien contingent, while the humans exchanged high fives and grins. Don't worry, Hannah told her new alien friends, patting Mook's chitinous shoulder. We'll start you off easy, maybe just simulated predators and minor atmospheric toxins. You consider those things easy? Prill asked, their 4 vertical eyes widening in sequence. Compared to what we could be doing. Absolutely, Sung confirmed. We haven't even talked about gravity modification, sleep deprivation, or extreme weather conditions yet. The alien students looked at each other with expressions of dawning horror. But why? Asked a tall, crystalline being named Voss, whose translucent body had been shimmering with stress throughout the entire exercise. What possible purpose does such extreme training serve if there are no wars to fight? June considered the question seriously. Have you ever faced a natural disaster? A solar flare that knocked out planetary shields? A sudden hull breach on a spacecraft? The aliens were silent, most of them shaking their heads. Those things don't care if you're at war or at peace, June explained. Nature doesn't distinguish between soldiers and civilians when it kills you. On Earth, everyone learns survival skills because everyone might need them. As the students made their way toward the exit, medical drones hovered nearby, treating minor injuries and providing rehydration. Most of the alien students required at least some attention, while the humans waved the drones away. Commander Vrax met them at the main doors, his imposing figure blocking the exit. The four-eyed alien examined the assembled students with an appraising gaze. "Before you leave, I want your honest assessment," he said. "Raise your hand if you believe this exercise was too dangerous for academy training." Almost every alien student raised a limb, appendage, or sensory organ. None of the humans did. "Now," Vrax continued, "raise your hand if you learned more in these 3 hours than in the previous week of classroom instruction." After a moment's hesitation, every student, alien and human alike, indicated agreement. Vrax's mouthparts formed what might have been a smile. "That is precisely my conclusion as well. True learning occurs at the edge of comfort, not safely within it." As they finally exited the training dome, the students separated into small groups, heading toward their respective dormitories. Mook found himself walking alongside June, questions still buzzing in his mind. "I noticed something strange during the exercise," he said, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "When the difficulty increased, when the fog came, when visibility dropped, you humans seemed to become more focused, more effective. Almost happier." June nodded. "Good observation. Humans are at their best when challenged. Our history is filled with examples of our greatest achievements coming during our most difficult times." "That seems counterintuitive," Mook replied. "Most species function optimally under stable, predictable conditions. And that works perfectly well on stable, predictable worlds," June said. "But Earth isn't like that. Never has been." They reached the junction where their paths would diverge. Mook to the arthropoid dormitory sector, June to the newly constructed human quarters. "One last question," Mook said. "During the exercise, when you were pinned down by heavy fire from 3 directions, I saw you smile. Actually smile. Why?" June looked thoughtful. "There's a certain clarity in dangerous moments. Everything non-essential falls away. You become purely present." She shrugged. "It's hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. Maybe you will someday. After today, I suspect I will," Mook replied, his compound eyes reflecting the overhead lights. "Commander Vrax seemed quite serious about implementing your training methods. Just remember," Jum said, turning to leave, "we're not trying to turn you into humans. We're trying to show you what your species is capable of when pushed past what you think are your limits." As they parted ways, Mook found himself standing taller, his many limbs feeling somehow stronger despite the day's exertion. For the first time since the humans had arrived at the academy, he began to understand what it meant to come from a death world, and why that might not be the disadvantage everyone had assumed. The humans hadn't just survived Earth's many dangers. They had been forged by them, shaped into a species that didn't merely endure challenges, but actively sought them out as opportunities for growth. In the distance, he could hear the human students laughing together, already planning modifications to tomorrow's training session. Their voices carried a confidence that was becoming less alien to him by the hour. Perhaps, Mook thought, the most dangerous thing about humans wasn't their strength or their speed or their tactical thinking. Perhaps it was their absolute conviction that they could become better tomorrow than they were today, and their willingness to endure whatever pain was necessary to make that happen.